You know that feeling when you wake up and realize your life's just stuck on repeat? That was me 6 months ago. Same alarm, same job I didn't love, same gym membership I barely used. I'd scroll through my phone for an hour before even getting out of bed, already annoyed at myself for wasting time. The weird part is I wasn't even unhappy for a big reason, just 100 small ones stacked up over time. I tell myself, tomorrow I'll get back on track. Tomorrow became next week, then next month. Then one morning, my phone died overnight. No alarm, no scrolling. I woke up late for work, panicked, skipped breakfast, and ended up getting stuck in traffic for an hour. I was sweating, cursing, miserable, and when I finally got to work, my boss pulled me aside. He said, "You've been slipping lately." That hit harder than I expected. Not because he was wrong. He was right. I had been slipping. But hearing it out loud made me realize how far I'd drifted from the person I used to be. I wasn't lazy by nature. I just lost consistency. That night, sitting on my couch with takeout and a dull ache in my chest, I made a deal with myself. No more tomorrow. I'd start small, but I'd start that day. I didn't know it yet, but that one choice would trigger a chain of events, some motivating, some painful, and one so unexpected it nearly broke me before rebuilding everything. So that same night, I decided I'd do one thing, just one, that I could stick with no matter what. Issues push-up. Simple, measurable, no excuses. I told myself, do 10 push-ups a day for a week. The first night, I barely made it to 7. I laughed at myself. This wasn't some movie montage. I was already shaking halfway through. But when I finished, I felt proud. Not because it was impressive, but because I'd actually done what I said I'd do. By day 4, something weird happened. My coworker, Jenna, noticed. She said I looked more awake lately. That tiny comment hit harder than caffeine. I doubled down, started waking up earlier, doing a quick walk before work, cutting down on social media. Then came the first real test. On day 11, I got a call from my younger brother. He'd just been laid off. He sounded wrecked, like all the air had left his lungs. I drove over to his apartment to check on him. What was supposed to be an hour turned into an all-night conversation about failure, fear, and feeling stuck. By the time I got home, it was 3 a.m. I was exhausted, emotionally drained, ready to crash. But then I remembered the push-ups. That stupid, small promise. I sat on the floor, still in my jeans, and did 10 shaky push-ups in the dark. And I'll be honest, I cried halfway through them. Not from pain, but from this quiet realization that keeping a promise to yourself, even when no one's watching, builds something inside you that other people can't give you. Trust. I didn't know it yet, but that consistency was about to pull me through something far worse than a bad day at work or a sleepless night. A month in, I was starting to feel unstoppable. 10 push-ups had turned into 50, morning walks had turned into runs, and I was journaling every night. It wasn't dramatic, but my days felt aligned for the first time in years. Then, one Thursday morning, everything cracked. I left my journal open on the kitchen counter. Dumb move, I know. My girlfriend, Leah, had stayed over the night before. She was sipping her coffee when she asked, "Hey, who's Alyssa?" I froze. Alyssa was a coworker I'd mentioned once, the new hire who joined our team, who I'd written about because I admired her work ethic. My entry literally said, "Seeing how consistent Alyssa is reminds me what discipline looks like in real life." But Leah's tone wasn't casual. She'd clearly read more than that line. She started scrolling through my journal, half joking but half angry. "You write about her more than me," she said. I tried to explain that it wasn't romantic, it was admiration, inspiration even, but she wasn't having it. She stormed out, saying something like, "You want consistency? Go be consistent with her." It stung. Not because she doubted me, but because I realized how fragile trust can be, even when you're doing everything right. For the first time since I started, I didn't want to do my push-ups that night. My whole rhythm felt pointless. But that's the trap. Consistency only means something when it's tested. So I got down on the floor, angry, tired, and heartbroken, and did 50 push-ups anyway. Halfway through, I caught my reflection in the mirror, red-faced, sweaty, frustrated, but still moving. And it hit me. Sometimes, the point isn't to feel good about the routine. Sometimes, the point is to not give up on yourself when the world gives up on you. After that fight, Leah didn't come back. She texted me once, something like, "You need to figure out what you actually want." I never replied. I told myself it was fine, that I'd just pour my energy into self-improvement. But the silence was brutal. You don't realize how much space a person occupies in your daily life until they're gone. The morning texts, the random calls, even the dumb little arguments about what to eat. Suddenly, I had all this time, and none of it felt good. At first, I filled it with noise, podcasts, workouts, new routines. I was doing everything right on paper, waking up early, eating clean, journaling, running, reading. But I wasn't doing it because I wanted to grow. I was doing it because I didn't want to feel. That lasted about 2 weeks before I cracked. One Friday night, I found myself sitting in the dark, scrolling through old photos, wondering if consistency even mattered. What was the point of being disciplined if I still felt so empty? Then, and I'll never forget this, I got a message from my brother, the one who'd lost his job. He sent me a photo of his planner, full of daily check marks. He'd started doing the same small habits I told him about, journaling, walking, little daily promises. His message said, "I know things are rough right now, but you helped me turn things around. Don't stop. You don't know who's watching." I stared at that message for a long time. That one line, "You don't know who's watching," flipped a switch in me. Consistency isn't about how you feel in the moment. It's about who you're quietly becoming while no one claps for you. So I kept going. No shortcuts, no skipping days. And that's when something unexpected happened, something that tested my progress in a completely different way. About 2 months into this new me phase, my boss called me into his office again. But this time, his tone was different, relaxed, almost proud. He said, "I've noticed you've been sharper lately, more reliable. I want to give you a shot at leading the next client project." It felt like everything I'd been working toward was finally paying off. The project was high stakes, tight deadlines, big budget, big visibility. If I pulled it off, it would be the kind of thing that could fast-track my career. For 2 weeks, I was laser-focused, up early, eating right, no distractions. But one night, as I was finalizing a report, a coworker, Mark, sent me a message. "Hey, I've got last year's data. We could recycle some of it to save time. No one will notice." I knew what he meant. The client wouldn't know. The numbers would look clean. But it wasn't ours. I stared at that message for a long time. My brain started justifying it immediately. It's not that big a deal. Everyone reuses data sometimes. You're exhausted. You deserve a break. But then, weirdly, I thought about those 10 push-ups. About that promise I made when no one cared. Consistency wasn't just about showing up. It was about doing things the right way every time, even when it's invisible. So I told Mark no, and he wasn't happy. He said I was overthinking it, that I was trying too hard to be a saint. But I held my ground. That night, I finished the report from scratch. Took me until 3 a.m. I was half delirious by the end, but something inside me felt unshakable, like I'd just passed a test that had nothing to do with data. Funny thing, 2 weeks later, the client found out someone on another team had reused old info, and they got caught. The fallout was brutal. When my boss found out my report was clean, he called me a rock. Said, "You're the only one I didn't have to worry about." That hit deep, because for once, I wasn't proud because someone praised me. I was proud because I knew I stayed consistent with my values. But the universe wasn't done testing me yet. Something much bigger and far more personal was waiting around the corner. Just when I thought I had my life on track, career climbing, habits solid, confidence returning, life threw a punch I didn't see coming. It started with a phone call from my mom. Her voice was trembling. My dad had collapsed while mowing the lawn. They thought it was a heart attack. I drove 3 hours to the hospital, half in shock, half praying under my breath. When I got there, I saw him hooked up to monitors, pale, motionless. My mom was sitting beside him, whispering that he'd be okay, but I could tell she didn't believe it. The next few days were a blur. I slept on a chair beside his hospital bed, living on vending machine coffee and adrenaline. All my routines, workouts, journaling, early mornings gone in an instant. None of it mattered compared to just hearing him breathe. Then, on the third night, while I was staring at the heart monitor, something hit me. I've been so obsessed with building consistency in my habits that I'd forgotten the deeper reason behind it, to be there for the people I love with strength, patience, and presence. Dad eventually stabilized. They said it was a mild heart attack, scary, but survivable. You need months of recovery. When I drove home after that first week, I looked at my journal, untouched and dusty on the desk. For a moment, I felt like a failure again, like all that discipline had evaporated. But then I remembered something Dad once told me when I was younger. Consistency isn't about never missing a day. It's about never giving up on yourself, even after you do. So I picked up the pen, wrote down everything that happened, and started again. Smaller steps this time. A short run instead of full workout. 1 page of writing instead of 5. And just like that, my routine wasn't about perfection anymore. It was about resilience. What I didn't know was that this new mindset, this gentler kind of consistency, would be the thing that completely changed the direction of my life a few weeks later. A few weeks after my dad came home from the hospital, things started settling into a fragile new rhythm. I'd drive over after work to help him with rehab exercises, mow the lawn, fix little things around the house. He was quieter than before, humbled, maybe, but every once in a while he'd crack a joke and the old warmth would flicker back. One afternoon, while I was trimming the hedges, I heard someone calling my name. I turned around, and there she was. Leah. She was standing on the sidewalk, holding a bag of groceries. Turns out, my mom had run into her at the store and mentioned what happened to Dad. Leah had decided to drop by with some food. I wasn't sure how to react. My first instinct was irritation, like she had no right to show up after everything that happened. But then, seeing her face, soft, worried, genuine, something in me melted a little. We talked on the porch while my parents napped inside. She told me she'd been following my brother's updates online and knew I'd been helping with my dad. Then she said something that caught me completely off guard. I used to think you were obsessed with control, but maybe you were trying to find peace. That line hit me like a gut punch, because it was true. I've been chasing discipline to fix my life, but what I really wanted was calm, stability, something predictable in a world that never stayed still. We didn't get back together that day, but we talked for a long time. And by the time she left, I realized how much I'd changed since the last time I saw her. I didn't need her approval. I wasn't desperate for closure. I was just steady. That night, I wrote something new in my journal. Consistency doesn't make life easier. It makes you stronger, strong enough to handle life when it's not. I didn't know it yet, but Leah would reappear again soon, under very different circumstances, and that encounter would test whether I'd really learned what consistency meant, or if I was just pretending. 2 months passed after that porch conversation, and I honestly thought that was it, a quiet, mature ending between two people who'd finally grown up. But life has a habit of circling back when you least expect it. It was a Sunday evening. I just gotten back from a run when my phone buzzed. It was Leah. Her message was short. "Can I call you? It's important." When I answered, I could hear her trying not to cry. Her voice shook as she said, "I got fired." Apparently, her company had downsized, and she'd been one of the casualties. She sounded completely lost, like I had when everything fell apart months earlier. Without thinking, I told her to come over. When she showed up, she looked wrecked, eyes red, hands shaking, wearing the same hoodie she used to steal from me. We sat at my kitchen table for hours, talking about how everything she'd worked for suddenly vanished. I didn't try to fix it, I just listened. At one point she asked, How do you keep it together? You used to fall apart over little things. I laughed a little, not out of pride, but because it was surreal hearing her say that. I told her, I don't keep it together. I just keep showing up. She stayed the night, just on the couch, and in the morning, I found her sitting there with one of my old notebooks open. My routines, my little checklists, my goals. She looked up and said, "You really do this every day?" "Yeah," I said, "even when I don't want to." That's when she asked if I'd help her build a plan, not just for work, but to get her life steady again. And part of me hesitated. It felt like a trap, old feelings, old patterns. But another part of me knew this was my test. Could I stay consistent without losing myself again? So I said yes, but with one rule: you build your routine. I'll just hold you accountable. It was a small decision, but it changed everything. Because helping her didn't just test my discipline, it exposed whether it was real or just a performance. At first, helping Leah rebuild her routine felt good, almost redemptive. We'd meet at a cafe every morning before work, sip coffee, and plan out her days. She started applying for jobs again. I kept up with my workouts, and it all felt balanced. Familiar, but healthier this time. But somewhere along the way, lines started to blur. One morning, she reached across the table, rested her hand on mine, and said, "I missed this, us." It caught me off guard. I didn't know what to say, so I just smiled awkwardly and looked away. That night, she texted me, "You don't have to pretend you don't still care." And she was right. I did care. But I also remembered how broken I was after the first time things fell apart. So I kept my distance. I told her, "Let's focus on getting you back on your feet first." She said she understood, but I could tell she didn't like it. Over the next few weeks, our meetings became heavier. She'd cancel plans, sleep late, stop journaling. I tried to motivate her gently, but she snapped one morning, "Not everyone is a robot like you." That one stung, because she wasn't wrong. I had become methodical, almost mechanical about my habits. But that routine was my lifeline. It was how I kept from sinking. After that, things got tense. She started pulling away again, missing check-ins, ignoring calls. And even though part of me knew this was her process, another part felt that old ache, the one that used to drive me crazy. Then one night, I got a message from her. "I can't do this. I feel like I'm just your project. No angya, no budbye." Just that. And just like that, she was gone again. I sat on my couch, staring at that message for what felt like hours. My old self would have spiraled, stopped running, stopped writing, maybe even reached out just to feel needed again. But instead, I stood up, dropped to the floor, and did my push-ups. Because that night, I realized something brutal but freeing. Consistency doesn't stop you from hurting. It just stops you from breaking the same way twice. I was hurt, but stable. Sad, but solid. And for the first time in my life, I understood that real growth doesn't always mean getting the happy ending. Sometimes, it's just not losing yourself when it falls apart. After Leah disappeared again, I could have sunk into that familiar spiral, skipping runs, binging shows, ignoring my journal. But something in me had shifted. I realized that consistency wasn't about who stayed in my life. It was about me staying in mine. So I threw myself into a new project. At work, I volunteered to lead a community outreach initiative, something completely outside my comfort zone. It was chaotic, messy, and way more responsibility than I'd signed up for. But every day I showed up. Early mornings, late nights, follow-up calls, endless planning. The unexpected part? People noticed. Volunteers started showing up because I was reliable. My team started leaning on me. Not because I was flashy, but because I never missed a commitment. One evening, exhausted after organizing a citywide volunteer event, I was sitting on the curb outside the community center, sipping water. A young woman approached me, a college student who had been helping with logistics. She said, "I've never met someone who just keeps going, even when things get messy." That hit hard, because I realized something. My consistency was starting to ripple out. My daily habits, the small promises I made to myself, were now influencing other people quietly, invisibly. And for the first time, I felt like my pain, my heartbreak, and all those months of relentless, sometimes tedious self-discipline weren't wasted. They had a purpose I hadn't anticipated. Later that night, I wrote in my journal, "Consistency doesn't just build you, it builds the world around you, even when you don't see it." It was a turning point, not just for my routines, but for how I viewed setbacks, heartbreak, and life itself. Little did I know, the universe had one more test lined up, something so unexpected it would completely redefine how I understood the power of showing up every single day. A few weeks after the community project, I got an email from a startup I'd casually helped months ago, a "thanks for your input" kind of message. But this one was different. They were offering me a temporary position leading a small team to launch a pilot program in another city. Exciting, yes. Terrifying, absolutely. I had 2 weeks to decide. I could either stay comfortable in my routine, my steady job, my consistent workouts, my small circle of control, or risk everything to take a leap that might fail spectacularly. I didn't know how to decide. My brain went in circles. What if I'm not ready? What if I ruin it? But then I remembered all the push-ups I'd done when I didn't want to. All the early mornings, the runs, the journaling, the clean reports, the accountability with Leah. All those small acts of showing up had one thing in common. They gave me confidence I hadn't had before. I made the call. The next month was chaos. Flights, unfamiliar offices, late nights, strategizing with a team I barely knew. I messed up presentations, missed deadlines, faced criticism I wasn't used to. Some nights, I cried into the hotel pillow, wondering why I'd left the safety of my consistent world. But I kept showing up. Every day, I woke up, ran, planned, strategized, wrote notes, and pushed forward. And slowly, something incredible happened. The pilot program started gaining traction. The team trusted me. The investors noticed. And the strangest part? I realized I thrived in the chaos because my foundation of consistency had given me something more valuable than a perfect schedule. It had given me resilience. By the end of the pilot, the startup offered me a full-time position. Not just a job, a chance to lead projects that mattered, to influence people, to keep growing. And it all traced back to the tiny choices I'd made months ago. The push-ups, the journal entries, the runs, the accountability, even the heartbreaks. By the time the startup offer landed, I started noticing changes in other areas of my life too. My relationships, habits, even my mindset were different. For one, I wasn't as reactive anymore. When my dad called panicked about a minor health scare, I stayed calm, listened, and helped him logically instead of spiraling. When friends asked for favors, I could say yes without overcommitting or no without guilt. My emotions didn't disappear. I still felt hurt, joy, frustration, but they didn't dictate my actions anymore. Even with Leah, the impact lingered. She reached out a couple of times over the following months, sharing updates about her own routines. I didn't get swept up. I just listened, gave advice, and let her handle her life. We weren't a couple anymore, but the lessons I'd learned from our time together, showing up, staying accountable, building trust, continued to guide me. And then there were the small, invisible victories. I started cooking more consistently instead of grabbing takeout. I read a book a week. I woke up without hitting snooze 3 times. It all felt minor, almost silly, but when I looked back, I realized these tiny, consistent actions had rebuilt my life from the inside out. One night, I flipped through my old journals, the messy handwriting, the push-up counts, the tear-stained pages after Leah left, and smiled. The man who used to drift aimlessly through mornings, spiral over small setbacks, and depend on others for stability had been quietly replaced. Consistency didn't just help me achieve goals. It taught me patience, resilience, and the quiet power of showing up, even when no one is watching. Just when I thought I had everything under control, life decided to throw one last curveball. It was a Friday evening, and I was wrapping up work emails from my temporary city apartment. My phone rang. My dad. His voice sounded strange, quieter than usual. He'd injured his knee badly while gardening. The doctor said he'd need surgery and weeks of recovery. I felt that old panic creeping in, the same one I used to feel when things spiraled out of control. My first instinct was to drop everything, fly home immediately, and abandon all routines. But then I paused. I thought about the months I'd spent building consistency, about the push-ups in the dark, the runs, the journaling, the steady work at the startup. I realized something. Consistency wasn't about avoiding crises. It was about navigating them without losing yourself. So I did something I never would have done before. I made a plan. I arranged flexible work hours, booked a flight that allowed me to balance time with my dad and my job, and set up a daily routine that I could maintain even while traveling. For the next 2 weeks, I was sleep-deprived, stressed, and emotionally stretched thin. But I didn't skip a day of journaling, didn't skip workouts, didn't skip showing up for both my dad and my responsibilities. It was hard, chaotic, and exhausting. And it worked. I got through it. My dad recovered, I stayed on track with work, and I even found time to reflect each night on what I'd learned. That's when I understood the truth I'd been chasing all along. Consistency isn't just a habit. It's armor. It's a lifeline. It's the quiet force that keeps you steady when the world keeps shaking. By the time my dad was fully recovered and the startup was running smoothly, I finally had space to breathe and reflect. Sitting on my balcony one evening, journal open, I realized just how far I'd come. Consistency had taught me more than just discipline. It had taught me patience, that growth is slow, invisible, and often boring. It had taught me resilience, that heartbreak, setbacks, and chaos are inevitable, but you don't have to crumble under them. And it had taught me humility, that showing up isn't glamorous, but it matters more than talent, luck, or even charisma. I thought back to the moments I'd almost quit. The push-ups when I was heartbroken, the honest report when everyone else was cutting corners, the runs after Leah left, the long nights managing a startup while worrying about my dad. Every small act of showing up compounded into something bigger than I expected, a life steadier, stronger, and more meaningful than the one I had before. If I could give advice to someone going through similar struggles, it would be this. Start small. Pick one thing you can commit to daily. Even 10 push-ups. Even 5 minutes of journaling. Show up even when you don't feel like it. That's when the real growth happens. Protect your values. Consistency isn't just about doing something. It's about doing it right. Life will throw curveballs. You will fail. But consistency is what lets you get back up, stronger each time. And above all, consistency isn't just about what you accomplish. It's about who you become while doing it. Looking back, I realized consistency didn't just change my habits, it changed me. The man who once drifted through mornings, relied on others for stability, and felt powerless in the face of setbacks is gone. In his place is someone who knows that life will always be messy, unpredictable, and painful. And that's okay. Consistency taught me that growth isn't flashy. It isn't about sudden breakthroughs or dramatic wins. It's about showing up day after day, even when no one notices. It's about doing the little things that build character, resilience, and trust in yourself first and in others second. I've been through heartbreak, family emergencies, career chaos, and personal doubt. Every single time, the habits I'd built, the push-ups, the journaling, the small promises were my anchor. They didn't stop the storms, but they kept me standing through them. So here's what I want anyone reading this to take away. Consistency is power. Not because it guarantees success, but because it guarantees you won't be lost in failure, heartbreak, or chaos. It's the quiet, invisible force that shapes who you are, how you react, and what you can endure. Start small. Show up. Keep going. Life will throw everything at you. But if you've built that foundation, You'll have the strength to face it all. And maybe, just maybe, you'll look back one day and realize that all those tiny, invisible steps were building a life you never thought possible.